Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
The Bo Bergdahl story, the last article written by, and he had more articles coming out. Michael Hastings was on this. Notice we have one of his good buddies, Staff Sergeant Joe Biggs, working for InfoWars. He's been saying these are connected for a long time since he died. I don't know, 6 to 8 months ago, however long ago it was, maybe a year. Time flies. How long has Hastings been dead now, Joe?
It'll be a year, June 18th, so we're coming right up on it right now.
So almost a year. And I mean, we got to go back to all those shows where you mentioned it might have been the Bo Bergdahl case. I remember rolling my eyes. What's a POW have to do with it? I mean, this is really getting serious now, folks. And as usual, we're right on top of what's going on. We just haven't figured it out yet because we're always in the middle of it to begin with. But Leanne McAdoo's riding shotgun. Steve Pieczenik's coming up to give his take. And Leanne and Joe can have a roundtable discussion with callers. Chris in Nevada, Army and law enforcement vet. What is your take on this whole story?
All right, Alex, thank you for this provocative, truth-based journalism that you're doing this morning. And hats off to Sergeant Biggs for his service. My apologies.
Thank you.
That's all right, brother. What do you think's going on here?
Couple of factoids. One, whenever this purported father, Robert Bergdahl, is making his announcement and the wife is speaking, look at him in the background. Observe. He has a very pronounced closing of his right eye, leaving the left eye open specifically, almost like a wink and a nod signal to somebody. Don't know who, but it's very obvious he's communicating in some sort of fashion to alert someone.
It's just like in the show Homeland, how Sergeant Brody does the same thing as finger tappings when he was sending the videos back home when he was being held captive. It's the same thing. I think he's kind of sending some kind of code over that video doing that.
Absolutely. Also, when you look at Hagel's coming out and trying to claim that capitulation and negotiation with terrorists is merely hostage negotiation, it speaks to the lies that they're trying to fabricate in this rhetoric-based story, followed by Susan Rice's coming forward, him-hawing around, stuttering, her lack of credibility based upon her lies perpetrated in the Benghazi scam with Hillary Clinton just really have destroyed any pretense of credibility she may have ever had, and she seems to be a agent of Valerie Jarrett in the White House, the real talking hand for the puppet Obama. But these are really things that fly in the face, and like you say, his perfect speaking of Pashtun really just defied any concept of normality for an American unless they have absolutely been schooled in that particular language for a lengthy time.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. I mean, he's definitely...
And that leans towards him being an infiltrator for some agency, not actually being a double or going over to the Afghans. And so in my gut, that tells me this is part of a whole new rollout that, oh, look, the Tea Party and the soldiers are Al-Qaeda, which we see them actually trying to promote right now in the news, flipping Homeland Security onto the American people. Your take on that, Chris, and then Joe Biggs.
Agent provocateur masked as a jihadi terrorist in truth.
That's what I think. Well, that caller really says it well. Agent provocateur, masked as a jihadi terrorist. Joe Biggs?
Well, one of the other things, though, that Lee and I spoke about yesterday or the day before was that maybe this is really all about the father. Maybe he's the one who is the actual, the operative and did something, and the son had to go in almost as, what was it we were saying yesterday? Remember that we were saying that we were thinking that the father was the one who was actually working for the CIA, and he had done something. Because you can see when he's talking to the president, he has that snarl look, almost kind of like, you know.
Negotiate to get his son.
Well, bottom line, they're covering something up, and this is distracting from the VA scandal, and I don't believe a word of it. And now we remember Hastings was hot on the trail of this. I mean, this is big. We'll be right back, and we'll get more from Leanne McAdoo and Steve Pieczenik and Joe Biggs. Stay with us. Monday, the 2nd day of June 2014, worldwide transmission coming up at the start of the next segment. We're going to have John Rappopo, who was on with us on the Sunday show for like 2 segments, on for a lot more today to cover the waterfront of propaganda, disinformation, and more. Popping in on very short notice is Dr. Steve Pieczenik, former head of psychological operations for the State Department, co-author with Tom Clancy, and kind of a master, a negotiator in his own right. And listen, I don't know his take on this Bergdahl Army report. I just know that when it all happened, I went, haven't I heard that before? And then it was the story Hastings was working on. He'd already done one when his car got blown up out in California. And then the wife was getting threatened and everything. And then she goes on TV and says everything's fine. She's the head, minion at the National Security Council. Doesn't get any more high level than that. I mean, in those meetings with like 8 people, she's in there. I think both of them have the cutouts of spies of some agency. And Biggs knew him. Esquire articles in serious combat. And he said all of their media would basically freak out. Biggs just loved it, was smiling and enjoying, rockets falling all around him. Biggs was saying that about Hastings, Staff Sergeant Joe Biggs, who works for Infowars.com. And now you have Bergdahl and his dad, if you just joined us, his own buddies saying, no, he walked off the base. He went AWOL. Well, Biggs was telling me that days ago when this first broke, and I said, I can't find that. We're not going to go with that. Well, now it came out what Biggs said. Biggs has friends that were in the unit with him. And we've had contractors calling in saying, no. I mean, we know people on the base, same thing happened. He left. He said he was going. Same thing CNN's reporting. So there's a lot of issues here. I want Leanne McAdoo to be able to ask some questions. And I also want to get Joe Biggs to be able to ask some and kind of recap this. But just briefly, because I appreciate you popping in on short notice. You were just on the Sunday show. Dr. Steve Pieczenik, what do you know about this? Because sometimes you know what happened. Or what is your take on it? Are we wrong to think this doesn't make sense with the CIA boss in Kabul getting his cover blown by Obama 2 weeks ago? And then now this happens. Is this guy a deep cover infiltrator into the Taliban, into the Haqqani network? Dr. Pieczenik, what do you know?
Well, what I know is I'm going to give you a very special, unusual story that will show you the hypocrisy and inconsistency of this administration. 1 month ago, I was served a subpoena by the FBI on behalf of the U.S. Attorney of the Southern District of Florida by the name of Brian Fraser at the behest of the Justice Department, Eric Holder, and at the behest of Cecilia Altonaga, United States Supreme Court District Judge, requesting my presence and the potential indictment for having non-negotiated against terrorists 35 years ago as the U.S. military officer and Deputy Assistant Secretary of State. And I was brought in on charges of criminal charges for doing exactly the opposite and being consistent with our policy of no negotiation with a Red Brigade terrorist. And as a result, the Aldo Moro, the Prime Minister of Italy, died. 35 years later, the State Department and the Justice Department, under the orders of Obama, has ordered me to appear before the court just 1 week ago, May 27th, 2014, at 10 a.m., in front of Brian Fraser, in front of an Italian prosecutor, at the behest of the Italian prosecutor, with the overlying notion that I will be committed for criminal indictment if I don't reveal what I had done in saving Italy and refusing to negotiate with terrorists. So what this shows, and what this just happened to me, and you're the only one to know now, the case number is here. It's 14MC 21380 Altonaga. The judge was Altonaga. The Attorney General was Brian Fraser. And I was brought up on charges that I potentially have killed a prime minister because I refused to negotiate in a time of war with Aldo Moro, with his Red Brigade. I was a U.S. military officer in combat, and I was a Deputy Assistant Secretary under Jimmy Carter, and for the very opposite reasons that this president, who's been a total hypocrite and a total incompetent, along with Eric Holder and the U.S. military, they have negotiated with a terrorist, allowed a deserter, this is a deserter, this is not an infiltrator, to leave his post. He should have been jailed, stockaded, and incarcerated. And he is not a prisoner of war. He is a deserter. He should have been tried. I, in turn, have been tried for saving my country, saving Italy, and I've had to pay $20,000 to a lawyer just to show up to explain why I did.
By the way, Dr. Pieczenik, I've got to interrupt you, and we'll go to our guest at 33 after. This is too important. But for people that don't know, Dr. Pieczenik will never talk about this on air, but I've gone and checked into him over the years. It's in the London Independent, the BBC, and Le Figaro in France, and the biggest papers in Italy, where they say Dr. Steve Pieczenik killed the prime minister by manipulating the Red Brigade and not negotiating, and then they killed him. Which is crazy, because how is not negotiating killing him when they're the ones that killed him? So that's in the papers 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 5 years ago. I mean, you can look up Dr. Steve Pieczenik, and that's pretty much what you get on him. I mean, you know, running those operations with the Army and others. And, of course, he helped found Delta Force with General Boykin, who's also a listener of the show. And what I can't believe here is we get him on about this, and he drops this bombshell. You didn't tell us that, Dr. Pieczenik.
No.
Was it sealed? What happened in the court?
It was concealed because I couldn't say a word to you or anybody else. But since I appeared on May 27th in front of a prosecutor who was flown over from Italy, we had an interpreter. This is all American tax dollars. Plus, we had Brian Fraser sitting there. I had to hire a lawyer for $20,000.
But what I want to say, was this under a national security order? Because I don't want to violate one of those.
No, it's not under national security order. As a matter of fact, this is a totally illegal procedure because they brought in a former military officer in a civilian court, and they didn't even know I was a military officer at the time because I was a Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Counterterrorism and Management. And so what happened is the military, the CIA, our Justice Department, State Department completely abandoned me as a former officer of the military, and now they're saying that they never leave anybody behind. It's an absolute lie. General Dempsey should resign. Hagel should resign. The President of the United States should be impeached for violation of constitutional orders and the fact that he has committed crimes. This person that they exchanged prisoners for was a deserter. I was a principal hostage negotiator and created that no negotiation hostage.
By the way, you're on record as the head psychiatrist over the PSYOP, and to be able to get the Camp David Accords as well.
I was the Assistant Secretary of State and one of the first. I had just saved over 500 hostages in Hanafi Muslim. I was asked by Secretary of State Cyrus Vance at the behest of Jimmy Carter and at the behest of Warren Christopher to go over to Italy. It was Prime Minister Cossiga. He was the Interior Minister.
Let me ask you a question. Are they going after you now because what you're saying on this show?
No.
I know they're purging a lot of people right now.
This was before.
No, I know this happened a long time ago, but they're going to use... Why are they coming after you now is what I'm saying.
I have no idea, because they believe that as a result of my actions of no negotiation with the terrorists, which is exactly what we've been doing our entire life, where I've saved countless thousands of Italians, I saved the country of Italy from being totally devalued and destabilized, they are now going...
Yeah, for those that don't know, the communists were going to take Italy over at that point, and you are credited with stopping it.
And the communists, the PCI under Berlinger, refused to support the Red Brigade. So what you have is a situation where the president abandoned a soldier like me. The military, I had requested that our military help me. They abandoned me. The CIA abandoned me. You're talking about Justice abandoned me. You're talking about State Department, Kerry. And in contrast, they're telling you how great they are in a situation where you have a deserter and a man who didn't serve our country and who became an ally of the Al-Qaeda unit or the Haqqani.
I know, and they're spinning it. They're spinning it, and his dad speaks perfect Farsi. Joe Biggs, Staff Sergeant Joe Biggs, says none of this smells right to him. Joe,
no.
Leanne McAdoo, do you have any questions for Dr. Pieczenik?
Well,
Leanne? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, one of the things I wanted to ask, though, was, you know, how many American lives do you think are going to be endangered now by us negotiating with terrorists now?
My answer, let me just say this to Dr. Pieczenik, my answer is every U.S. officer, every U.S. non-commissioned individual, and every covert operative from 15 different intelligence units, including the CIA, the NSA, the NGA, and almost every American who's out there serving our country.
It's just unbelievable. I mean, like you said, the president should be impeached on this. I mean, this is just...
What is Obama doing? It seems like he's going crazy.
Well, I don't know if he's going crazy, but he's completely incompetent. From the Benghazi issue to the Osama bin Laden to Newtown to the Santa Barbara to the fact that he has no idea of what he's doing. He is incompetent. In any situation, in any government, I've served 5 different presidents and continued to work with our Defense Department. I have never seen such incompetency. It has nothing to do with the Democrat, Republican, or whether he's black or white. The man has never had any experience. He's never managed the system, and he has no idea of what our history is.
He's also got a bunch of foundation heads who've never even been in the military, and I'm not putting them down that they're women, but it is a bunch of women, I mean, that he's got running the State Department and everything, who just want to have, I mean, it seems crazy.
Well, there's no excuse for John Kerry, who's a senator and was a combat veteran in Vietnam, not to know our policy and to have accepted this. There's absolutely no excuse for Chuck Hagel, whom I supported as Secretary of Defense, to allow himself and allow General Dempsey to accept this notion that we had a soldier in need. He was not a soldier. The minute you walk off the base, you are a deserter. That is a criminal offense. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. His mental health is a problem. That's an issue with all my hostages, but we deal with it. But we never go in on an issue of a deserter or a person who went AWOL. So this is not a soldier we left behind.
I mean, okay, let me stop right there. We're going to skip this. We're going to skip this network break. Let's just skip the network break. I want to bring Leanne McAdoo in, who's been holding patiently in the wings. She was hopping up and down Saturday about this. I wasn't really paying attention to it. I'm glad she raised it to my attention, and that Biggs did as well. Leanne, what are your questions or comments for Dr. Pieczenik?
Well, it kind of seems like they're turning against Obama, almost setting him up for impeachment at this point. Like they're done using him to create chaos, as he's done a very good job of creating chaos. But now they immediately, less than 24 hours, threw him under the bus. So it's almost like they're setting him up for something. But what I'm curious about is why these particular terrorists were released from Gitmo, because they're part of a different network. Now, obviously, we need to do a little bit more research. We'll have this for the nightly news. But there were other Taliban leaders that were part of the network that was holding Bergdahl that they could have negotiated for. So why these particular guys? And
yeah, we need to look at those people closely.
Why was his father, working to negotiate for these guys?
His dad doesn't act like a postman. That's all I'm saying. Dr. Pieczenik?
Well, I think you asked a brilliant question. First of all, the people who really held, as I understood, Bergdahl were not part of the Al-Qaeda group. They were Haqqani. Haqqani is a spin-off of the CIA and the Pakistani ISI. And we, ironically, have been working with them, or the U.S. governments were working with Haqqani for a long time. So this administration had a very good idea of what was happening to Bergdahl for a long time. But your point about releasing these terrorists who are not part of the Haqqani, they are real old-line killers and very professional killers who've killed thousands of Shiites. And when they go out again, they will kill again. There's no issue that you release a terrorist and you get a promise from Qatar that they will be fine. Qatar is a place where, you can buy and sell anything. It's like Casablanca. But
let me raise this to Dr. Pieczenik.
Yeah, but in Qatar, though, that's the spot where they send soldiers for mid-tour leave. So you're going to have soldiers in Qatar, and you're going to have these 5 terrorists who hate America running around out there having a field day.
Correct.
And then how can we guarantee that this government can even, keep dibs on these guys? I mean,
let me throw this out. Well, they may have been turned or something, but the point is, we don't know that, or we can get Pieczenik's take on it. Here's my issue. We're seeing a public reset with Libya, Syria, and all these other proxy wars to try to put Al-Qaeda and jihadis out of Saudi Arabia in charge all over the Middle East to destabilize things further, overthrow more stable governments. I know Pieczenik was actually arrested by Assad's dad, so he's not a big fan of him, but I want to get his take on this. This looks like a public reset to me with Al-Qaeda affiliated groups. I understand the Haqqani group goes back to 79 as Zbigniew Brzezinski and the administration you were first in, but expand on that. Dr. Pieczenik, does this feed into the reset I see happening with Al-Qaeda?
Well, what's happening is Al-Qaeda is becoming stronger and stronger, and Obama can't admit that, and that was the issue with Benghazi. What happened in Benghazi was that we didn't have really an embassy then. We had a house where we were interrogating the terrorists and basically shipping guns into Syria, which is what we're doing again. We have no policy, and I think what the person said correctly is we're not imploding the president. The president is imploding himself. He has no control of what's going on. The CIA has no real intelligence. They're shipping guns into the system, and they're increasing the volatility of the area by really incompetency. And what's happening now is we have to probably go in at some point in order to control it. But right now we have CIA operatives in Jordan who are determining which terrorists can go in there and who are moderate, which is absolutely absurd. Once you're a terrorist, you're a terrorist. There is no such thing as a moderate or extreme terrorist. If you're willing to use violence, you're willing to use violence. What you're seeing now is the absence of intelligence, competency, and a historical sense of what's happened to our country, and a future sense of where we should be going. It's as simple as that. We have an incompetent president,
sure,
an incompetent Secretary of State, and an incompetent Secretary of Defense.
Well, I mean, they're clearly going with the order out of chaos model, but there's not even order they're taking out of the chaos. And that's what I guess the British intelligence head said a few months ago, was that they've never seen such disjointed lack of a message. And I think it's because the military-industrial complex interest and the big banks that own it, they just want more conflict. So I guess in the final equation, they do know what they're doing, Dr. Pieczenik.
Not really. What's happening is, even though the military-industrial complex exists, what's really happening is we're getting a escalation of chaos, and we're getting what we're not looking at, quite frankly, my friend, is in China. And China is becoming more and more of a aggravation on our Asian front, and they're engaging themselves with Vietnam, the Philippines, and
let me ask you that, Dr. Pieczenik, because you raised it. I know you've been to North Korea, you name it, and worked with the South Korean government and worked with the Japanese government. Expanding on that, and you reported last year live for us there. You were a few years ago on, saying watch China, and I kind of halfway rolled my eyes because they're already taking us over economically. Why on earth would they want to mess with Japan? Now they're saying we'll take islands of Japan, we'll take islands of the Philippines. They're now threatening to basically invade Vietnam. I mean, what's going on in China that's got them this aggressive when historically they've not acted like this?
China has always watched our leaders. When they worked with Nixon, they was very much afraid of him. When they had to deal with Bush Sr., they were very much afraid of him. When we have a strong leader, they pull back. When you have a weak leader, you have people like Putin who will annex Crimea, and you will have the Chinese leadership say, okay, now we will go into the Spratly Islands. The reason they're going into that area where we have a national interest or a world strategic interest is because it's oil. It's oil and gas, which Vietnam, the Philippines, Indonesia, Taiwan claim. It's been a claim for 20 years, but now that they see we have an incompetent president who should really resign or be impeached, they will move forward because they know nothing can happen. And CINCPAC cannot do very much about it at this point. All they can act is as negotiators.
Yeah, for those that don't know, the Chinese have been with arms taking over oil rigs and stuff already. So,
correct.
I mean, this is really escalating fast.
Correct. And at the same time, we're incredibly escalating into a chaotic state in the Middle East. In short, we have a president who doesn't belong there, who has no idea what he's doing. We have a national security advisor who has already failed in Libya, lied to the public in Benghazi, and is really not qualified to make any statements. We have a Secretary of State who's totally incompetent.
Well, here's my final question then, Dr. Pieczenik.
To global warming and has no idea of what he's doing. And we have Hagel, who has done absolutely nothing. In short, we do not have a government, but we're paying a lot of money for incompetency.
Leanne McAdoo, Staff Sergeant Joe Biggs, final questions for Dr. Pieczenik or final statements?
Well, I think, for me personally, I feel like the globalists, they're done with Obama. I mean, I really feel like he has created so much chaos, and now with just the media kind of turning on him and not just accepting the story, this guy's a hero, let's move on. This is big, and the fact that he did all of this without going through the proper 30-day, you got to notify Congress, change that in the NDAA in December, made that to where he can kind of fast track it. So this whole thing is it's just very fishy. And
I agree, but don't think the networks behind Obama are going to not give up power. They could stage a false flag and try to use that to get their butt out of the fire. Right. Biggs, any other comments? Because I want to get Pieczenik's take on a false flag.
Oh, I'm just curious as to whether or not they're going to somehow spin this to make him a hero, or in fact, are they going to actually punish him as a deserter like he should be?
They're going to spin him as as a hero. But the irony, what you just brought out, is an excellent point. The more they make him a hero, I can guarantee you from his own personal dynamics, and I've dealt with a lot of hostages who were not heroes, none of whom was as treasonous as this gentleman was, he will commit suicide at some point. There's no question about it, because he knows very well he was treasonous, he was AWOL, and he consorted with the enemy. I've never met a hostage who could not speak English after years of being incarcerated with their terrorists. I've never seen that. And what it means, in fact, is that he became one of them. They never tortured him. They never harmed him. He knows that. He admitted it.
Yeah, they chop people's heads off all the time, but he's left unscathed.
Right.
He's left unscathed. And the first words that are, words of Arabic and then Pashtun, and the inability to speak English tells me that he went completely to the other side willingly.
And by the way, his dad knows that, because he said, you need to, like a diver coming up too quick, you could end up dying. So I guess the Army doctors are telling him that, Dr. Pieczenik?
Well, what's happening is his dad basically intimidated Obama and the administration, because what happened is this man should never have been recruited into the Army. This was a very sweet boy. He was an ex-ballet dancer, dancing in the Nutcracker Suite, and he was a free spirit who grew up in a cabin lodge with no phones, nothing else. His father was kind of a hippie, and that's all fine. When he went to the recruiter told him, no, we in the Army are basically like the Peace Corps, but we have guns. So give me a break. And this guy ended up to be a machine gunner. I mean, this was...
Yeah, he was
a
saw gunner.
The military is really totally embarrassed and should be embarrassed. And
Dr. Pieczenik, we're out of time. Thank you for the short notice. StevePieczenik.com. Thank you, Leanne McAdoo, Joe Biggs. We'll have more. Stay with us.
We're on the march.
Rappoport's
the
coming up.
I'm
Alex Jones. Stay with us. All right. Sometimes we don't have him on for 4 or 5 months, and then we'll have him on 3 times in 1 week. But I want to make him a bigger part of the nightly news and also the whole operation. And he's John Rappopo, best-selling author, researcher, political analyst, investigative journalist, and so many other hats. He's coming up in just one moment to cover the waterfront of issues. And I know that we have Sean in Wyoming worked on issues concerning the question I had dealing with Bergdahl. And we've got Brandon in Texas, who's active Army, who's been holding as well. So we'll finish up with Bergdahl first with Rappopo and get his take on that, because he's always up on the news as a news hound. Let those callers that have been holding for 30 minutes get off the line, Brandon and then Sean, and then move forward into all these other issues with the host of NoMoreFakeNews.com, John Rappopo. Before we go any further, we are going to sell out of the Super Female Vitality. All it is 10 well-known herbs that are organic and concentrated in a live, cold-pressed tincture form. And that's why everyone I talk to, almost everyone, I know one person, it's now like 10 women I know that have taken it. One person said it made them tired at first, and that's because they think they had a hormone imbalance or something. So it can affect people differently. Have said it makes them bounce off the walls with energy, libido, you name it. They had already at the laboratory run less than 1,000 extra for our next order. So we can get those so we're not back ordered. Those are coming in a few days. But when those are gone, it could be 3 weeks, it could be a month and a half, because we're waiting on 2 of the herbs that are raw to be cold pressed. And you got to get them certified organic and all the rest of it. We're very neurotic about that, because we want to bring you the very best quality. It costs us $15 to $20 a bottle. Other people have similar stuff. It's like $2 a bottle, and they sell it for $100 instead of $50 like we do. And this is how we fund our operation, bringing you the Super Male Vitality, which we have plenty of, the Super Female Vitality, and the X2 Iodine. Now, again, we came out a year ago with the first Survival Shield. We still have that in stock and have discounted it, and it's great. It turns blue on paper. All the other iodines turn black. And that's because we believe they're bound with the alcohol or something, but you still need it. You still need iodine. The problem is it's not palatable for kids and things like that. He came out with the X2 that is from deep iodine crystals that are purple. And that's why it's important on paper, folks. It turns purple. The other iodines don't turn purple, you'll notice. That's because this is real pure iodine, and that's why Dr. Group believes it goes into the blood and just has this big effect because it just goes right into you. Now, consult your physician before you take it, and or your healthcare provider, and I would go slow. That's my advice. You know, this is all, I mean, even the government admits you need iodine. They used to put it in the salt, and they don't now. And instead, they put stuff in the food chain that's the opposite of it, the bromines, the bromides that block iodine. But for me, this has just been life-changing. And we love to promote and sell things that are excellent, that help fund the operation and the hardcore free speech we have. So, bare minimum, try it out for yourself if you're talking to your healthcare provider and reading all the disclaimers and things. I mean, hell, they can make you have disclaimers for vitamin C now, folks. So just whatever, look into it for yourself. And bare minimum, you've helped the broadcast. Bare minimum, you have funded hardcore free speech. And I want to thank all of you that have gotten the products. You've heard the rave reviews. I believe, like we've seen in almost all the other cases, you will love it and be blown away by it and become a regular user of it. So we have the X2 Survival Shield now available at InfoWarsLife.com. That's one word, InfoWarsLife.com. Or call toll-free 888-253-3139. We also have on InfoWarsStore.com all the Pro Gun T-shirts, all the Liberty-based T-shirts, the Don't Tread on Me, the ball caps, the hunting hats, the camo hats, the Made in America bronze, George Washington 1776 belt buckles. All of it limited edition at madein1776.com. That'll just take you to the subpage that has the Made in America stuff at InfoWarsStore.com, or call toll-free 888-253-3139. And we couldn't do any of this without your support. We don't have George Soros, like the globalists have, to fund $5 billion to overthrow Ukraine. We don't have billions of stimulus money like NPR and MSNBC get, and taxpayer money. We are literally sink or swim, free market, free will, free association. You decide to support us. And that's the only way I'd have it. And they haven't wrecked the country and the world to an extent yet to where we can't get the funding. So thank you. If the funding continues to come in, sometimes it's lean, sometimes it's fat. We take the fat, we put it into the operation to get more reporters, more people trained to do more. And that's what we're doing now. From Bilderberg to the FEMA camps in Virginia, to the radiation on the West Coast, to just reporters everywhere. Our great reporters like Jakari Jackson, Leanne McAdoo, Darren McBreen, Staff Sergeant Joe Biggs, just all the great reporters, like John Bound. There are so many others, Paul Watson, Steve Watson, Kurt Nimmo, just all of them. And the video editors and the whole team. It's now over 50 people total, and you have customer service, shipping, reporters, writers, crew running the shows. Everyone is just as important as everybody else. Because let's face it, I'm the first person to not be a narcissist on a power trip. I get very excited about the people we've reached and what we've been able to do with passion and the truth. But different strokes for different folks. I come off as obnoxious. I come off as aggressive. I come off as bombastic, as interrupting on many fronts. Some people don't like me, but they'll like our other reporters. They'll like Leanne McAdoo. They'll like a Rob Dew and their perspective on the world. And our yardstick is, do you love liberty? Do you want the truth? Do you care about history? Do you care about freedom? That's the kind of reporters we want. Some of them have journalism degrees from the University of Texas like Leanne. Others have worked for, McClatchy and Scripps Howard like McBreen. Others have worked for, production for semiconductor companies like Rob Dew. Others have no formal training like yours truly. We all just bring truth and justice to the table. And we're very excited to have the whole team here. I want to take some time out to thank all of you for supporting the operation so we could build this one-of-a-kind operation. I want to thank God, number one, for the providence of taking a sinner and a weak creature like myself, and the fact that I just turned my will over to liberty and was given something even greater than free will. I still have free will, but it's free will with a drive towards justice. And so I am so humble. And I'm living the American dream of liberty. There's great evil happening, but that's what animates us. That's the opposing force that tests our mettle. And so I am humble before my Creator and humble before other great lovers of liberty like John Rappopo and so many others that we have on this broadcast. John, I want to go to a few calls from Brandon and Sean and then give you the floor. In fact, I may even let you just take over the last 30 minutes to really get into whatever you want and may just step away. Not even because of time. Wild horses couldn't drag me away, but I'm getting you primed to maybe even send you some better equipment and have you host the show sometimes, just like the great David Knight does, who's out of the country with Josh Owens coming back from Bilderberg today in Copenhagen. But give us your brief take on, not too brief, on the Bo Bergdahl story, why it doesn't smell good to me. I want to see if it doesn't smell good to you. And then we're going to go to Brandon and Sean and then move on to other issues.
Thanks, Alex. Absolutely. Well, I would say three things quickly. One is an operation like this to bring back this guy is aimed at demoralizing U.S. soldiers, the entire, rank and file. That's number one. That's
exactly. How do you give focus to a traitor and someone who went and joined other people and then hold that up? It's meant to make us all feel bad. See, I hadn't gone with that angle. You hit it. Go ahead. Expand on that.
Right. I mean, that's the idea. The guy is AWOL, he deserts, whatever. And all of a sudden, this tremendous deal is made to return these Taliban chiefs in return, for this guy. And so what do the soldiers start thinking? Well, what are we doing over here in Afghanistan? We're dying, we're getting wounded, we're serving multiple tours to capture and kill these Taliban people. And all of a sudden, a few of the major ones are free. And this guy who walked away, U.S. soldier, he's returned to the United States. So that immediately puts a total cold blanket on the whole rank and file of the U.S. Army. And then number two, of course, it distracts everybody from the enormous VA scandal, the enormous and growing VA scandal that we haven't even begun to scratch the surface on, believe me. I mean, as huge as the implications are so far, that's nothing to compare to what's going to be dug up on this by people that are really looking. So this glosses all of that over. Oh, the commander-in-chief did a great thing and this and that. And it's promoted by all the talking points from the White House on the Sunday talk shows, etc. And then the final and third thing that I would say, and yes, this is speculation, but who knows? Maybe this guy, this U.S. soldier that was just returned, suppose, for example, he was actually getting ready to talk in public. Not because somebody had brainwashed him. Who knows? I don't know who this guy actually is. But just suppose that he wants to go public and talk about what's happened in the war over there. And the U.S. intelligence community got wind of it. Wouldn't that be incredible? And they say to the Akani network, you grab him, you give him back, we'll give you who you want. Now they have him locked down at a hospital. Exactly. And never to be seen again. Boom. End of story. Could very well be. I think we've hit all the angles. on that. Let's take a call from Brandon and then Sean. Brandon is active Army. Thank you for holding. Brandon, what's your take on this whole thing?
Yeah, I think we need to go back to the difference in stories between whether or not this guy walked off the fob or whether or not he fell behind on a patrol. If he walked off that fob, the soldiers around him would have, say he just dropped all his gear and his weapon. His platoon sergeant would have had to check that back in, his TA-50 and his weapon. Now, I think that we have to look at that first. I mean, there's a paper trail there. There's always a paper trail whenever. So you're saying the hobbits at the base, as they're called, would have actually checked all that and had a record. Well, that's what CNN is saying, is that, oh my gosh, people at the base are saying he walked off. But there'd be proof. Right. So another thing, I don't see how he could have possibly fell behind on a patrol. Any squad leader worth his salt's never going to let anybody outside. I mean, accountability is a huge thing in the military. I'm just not buying it. I think it's more likely. Well, continue. I was interrupting you. Going back to this forward base and describing how security works on those. Well, there's the only way he could have walked off that fob was if he was on an ECP, which is the entry control point. There would have been several people seen him do it. Yeah, they could have been told to lie or whatever about it, but most of the time they don't cover all their bases. There's going to be a paper trail, and if he fell behind on a patrol and got picked up out in the middle of nowhere, then his weapon and TA-50 would be missing, which TA-50 is what, your gear you carry. So I'm hearing two different stories on that, and I think if we get to the bottom of that, we'll find out a lot more about what this guy really is. Personally, I think he was a traitor to begin with. What do other people around you think? same thing. That's the conclusion that we've pretty much all come to. I don't know anybody that knows him personally, but it's just not passing the smell test with any of us.
Why would Obama then do this and release 5 of these really bad guys and then, at the same time, build this guy up like a hero? I mean, doesn't Obama know that'll blow up in his face? He just doesn't care.
I don't think he cares. I think he's just helping his buddies out. That's it, bottom line.
Very interesting. I appreciate your call. Let's talk to Sean in Wyoming. Sean, go ahead. You're on the air.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. I haven't talked to you in a while. I'm the fellow who worked with the Reagan National Advance Team for the campaign in 80 with the Secret Service and so forth. And I've been up here in Wyoming for 36 years, and I want to throw some more food for thought. I think you basically, we've got all the pieces there's been some tremendous points, and they all have validity. But what I've been up in Wyoming for 36 years, and I know the people and the different political factions in Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho like the back of my hand. And what struck me most telling is the fact when they wheeled these folks out with Obama the other day, and then when they flew back into Boise and they had that press conference, there's all kinds of different factions in Idaho, as you might know. There's constitutionalists and white supremacists and Nazis and former government people, and it's a whole plethora. It's unlike anything in Montana or Wyoming. And what you have here is basically, by the way of the appearance of the boy's father, a nonconformist. And he can be a nonconformist on the left or right. He certainly, to me, came across as a little bit in the hippie deal, and they're naturalists. If you look at her... So
you're saying he was kind of an odd duck, a hippie odd duck.
Well, he was typical of anybody who knows the social climate of Idaho, central Idaho and northern Idaho, where all these different people gather. And this very guy, it could be, Pieczenik may have something. This guy may have walked away. He might have been another Brad Tillman. He went over there and had some moral objections on what we were doing, walked over to the other side, and he had come from from a family that let's say were progressives and thought outside the box, and that's the old man was trying to communicate with him the other day how proud he was that he held to his moral convictions. But it doesn't smell right. It's just part of a continual psyop, whether it's in Santa Barbara or Newtown or this deal. And it's obviously, the first thing that hit me was the fact that it's a major distraction from the VA. We've got our own problems here in Wyoming, down at the base in Cheyenne, Fort Waring. And then the fact that they came from Idaho, and it's just very interesting, and it's just another psyop as far as I'm concerned.
All right, very interesting point. We're going to take one more call after break, and then or right now, and then come back from break with John Rappopo of NoMoreFakeNews.com, who's riding shotgun with me here today. But Pat Tillman didn't like them growing opium and guarding it, and didn't like the fact they were doing photo ops and were working with some of the al-Qaeda Taliban, but not the others. And now all that's come out. So I don't want to put him in the same area as this guy. Pat Tillman was an amazing guy, making $5 million a year, turned it all loose because he thought America was under attack. And then he went over there and found it was a bigger fraud and got upset. Totally different person than this guy. Let's talk to... Max in Idaho real quick says mother-in-law is friends with family, knows parents. Max, what's your take on all this briefly?
This isn't Max. This is his mother-in-law.
From Idaho.
Okay, it just says Max. Okay, fine, go ahead.
I know Bo's parents.
Okay, so what's your take on this then?
I really don't know. I know that they're wonderful people. I believe that Bo's father grew a beard and began to speak Arabic right after Bo was captured because I think there was nothing more than just he wanted to support.
So he was doing it through solidarity. Stay there, ma'am. Don't hang up. Well, what's your name, ma'am?
Susan.
Okay, Susan, stay there. And then we're going to get Rappopo going to ask you a question as well. And then that's it. I got to stop taking calls on this. By the way, I haven't gotten to any of the aftermath of Bilderberg 2014. A lot of important intel. I was on Coast to Coast AM last night breaking some of that down. John Rappopo, I said, what do you want to get into today? Just some wild card issue. And he goes, free energy or other forms of alternative energy that are being suppressed while they prepare to cut off our old forms of energy. And he's really got a lot of intel on that. We're going to spend a lot of the next hour on that subject. If you go up to drudgereport.com, it's now scrolled down to the bottom right-hand side. You can find an article that we put out last night, and it says, in the U.S., 4 major news networks, 0 Bilderberg 2014 coverage. Only some CNBC coverage. Drudge covered it. InfoWars covered it. WorldNet Daily covered it. A whole bunch of European newspapers covered it. But no news in the U.S. other than one cable network. And that's because people want to know about business, so it was business news. And it's just incredible that not even Fox News would cover this. Last year, Napolitano did cover it when he was filling in on one of the shows on Fox Business. So, again, that's why they're becoming obsolete. Is because they won't talk about world leaders meeting in secret when the world leaders brag in their own minutes and told German news that they're more powerful than Davos. So I'm going to get Rappoport's take on that. John Rappopo coming up, riding shotgun with us. Briefly here, going back to Susan, says she knows the family. Any other points you'd like to make on this whole situation with the so-called, prisoner of war release, Bo Bergdahl? Go ahead.
Well, my take on it, I've known the kid since he was a little boy. I've known Bob and Janie forever. My daughter went to school with Bo. He was just nothing more than I think that he just wandered off because I think he got over there and he was scared. He didn't want to be there. I think it's very innocent. I think he was brainwashed as far as I'm concerned, because if you knew the valley that we were all raised in, it's a very simple valley, and there's nothing to be scared of, to be raised there. You're just raised, and the boys either go off to service or they go to college. And Bo decided to go to the service, and he got caught up in something that he wasn't prepared for. And I think it's nothing more or nothing less than that.
Ma'am, I'd like to put you on hold, and I believe you who you say you are, but check that as a journalist to make sure it's on record, and have you on the nightly news tonight to talk about the family, to talk about the town, and to reach out to the family. Because I'm saying he could have been a deep cover agent, could be a hero infiltrating, could be what Pieczenik says, deserting and, off the reservation. Could have been grabbed. We don't know. It's just I don't believe anything comes out of Obama's mouth, and I don't know why they'd bring all this out now. It's a very sophisticated question. I'd like to get the truth out. So if you can reach out to the family for us, I'd appreciate that. But I'm going to put you on hold, and if you do that, I'd like to get your name and number and see if we can have you, go public and document you are who you say you are, so that we can get you to come on the nightly news tonight, okay? Thank you so much. Please don't hang up. So there you go, folks. We're just seeking the truth on this. With all the fake stuff we've seen put out, it just something isn't adding up. In closing on that subject, what do you make of what she just said, John Rappopo?
Well, it's quite possible, Alex, that, as she says, he got in over his head. Some propaganda, whatever. He decided, okay, this is what I want to do. And then all of a sudden, when he got over there, he realized the situation was quite different. But the last thing I would say is, you bet it's quite different over there. It's quite different than anybody thinks it is until they...
Let's come right back in 60 seconds. John Rappopo, I'm Alex Jones, Infowars.com. Follow us on Twitter, Real Alex Jones. Back up, PrisonPlanet.com. Spread the word, folks. We are the resistance. You are the resistance. Worldwide resistance. It really shows how controlled the networks are in this country, because that's what targets the mainline public that doesn't know their hands from their butt in many cases because of the upbringing of the media brainwashing system. We've got John Rappopo on the line with us, investigative journalist. No more fake news. This is a short segment, bunch of long segments coming up, and I want him to really be able to get into the conspiracy to shut off our old industry while blocking new energy, while acting like they're for the new energy. So I'm going to give him the floor.